Okay, we are trying to fill Congress with America First patriots that want to see the people of America taken care of, our country protected, our borders protected, fentanyl out of the system. To help me with that, I have Abe Hamadeh from Arizona. Abe, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Stephen, for having me on.
So let me give some background for those that maybe don't know you. You are running for Congress in Arizona. You are a former intel officer in the Army, a former prosecutor, and you've been endorsed for Congress by President Donald Trump. I read just in the last couple of days that the GOP of Arizona is suing after discovering close to 1 million fake, dead, moved, or older names on the voter rolls. Democrats are now fighting tooth and nail to keep those names on there. They want an enormous bloated voter roll. Why is this, and what can be done to clean up those voter rolls so we can have fair elections in the state of Arizona?
Sure. Our elections are a mess, Stephen. So, for your listeners, my race, I ran in 2022 for Attorney General. And my race was decided by 280 votes out of 2.5 million. It was the closest race in statewide history. There's still 9,000 uncounted ballots. So I'm really familiar with everything going on with the corruption in our elections. And that's exactly what it is. The GOP the Arizona Republican Party is suing so many of these counties because they are not doing their jobs of voter roll maintenance. And we saw that, even me personally, I have direct knowledge. As you mentioned, I'm a former intelligence officer in the U.S. Army, and I was serving overseas during the 2020 election, Stephen. And when I got back here, back from my deployment, I actually had multiple mail-in ballots at my house that were not in my name. These were people who lived here previously, and they just were not removing them from the voter roll. So it doesn't surprise me that there's hundreds of thousands of people who are on the voting rolls who should not be on there. It's a real big mess. I'm glad the Republican Party is fighting back, but you have Mark Elias, who's a Democrat super attorney, right? He's the one who always fights election cases. We're going up against a machine. Republicans are really behind on a lot of this stuff because the Democrats and George Soros and so many of them, they found vulnerabilities in our elections. All of our elections are conducted at the local level. And Soros, the genius of what he did was he was able to take over so many of these offices with his people and just create confusion. So when people ask me about our election, Stephen, they say, is it the machines? Is it the voter rolls? Is it when the machines go down on election day? I tell them it's death by 1,000 cuts, right? It's not one issue that really they just focus on. It's chaos. That's how they thrive. So luckily, everything I've been doing with my lawsuits, believe it or not, I'm still fighting my election lawsuit from 2022. And you always can tell when the system's going after you because we've been sanctioned the most, and they withheld evidence from us. So it's really fascinating for me to be in this process. And I tell folks in many ways, they gave me decades of knowledge in a condensed 1-year period of time. So our elections are a mess, but I'm hopeful when I'm in Congress, I can hopefully, with President Trump in the White House, who's also focused on elections, that we're able to clean it up at the federal level because that's what's needed right now. So many people have lost confidence in our elections, and we need to restore the faith in our republic.
Yeah, well, they say there's no voter fraud. And then just in the last couple days, a judge deemed down in Hidalgo, Texas, wait a minute, this election was full of fraudulent ballots. But unless somebody goes in and looks at them and sees what's going on, Arizona, 60% of the areas had machines go down. They were purposely handing out Sharpies. They weren't counting the votes in a timely manner. They gave themselves time to adjudicate. I mean, there's just so many different things. But then on top of that, they're going after like the Trump electorate group. And yet at the same time, we now know nearly 1 million fake names, old names, dead people. Like there's only one party in the country that doesn't want to clean this up, and it's not the Republican Party. And so hopefully, like you say, that will be a big change. Another thing, you being a border town, I guess every state's now a border town, but being in Arizona, how damaging has this invasion at the border been for the citizens of Arizona?
Oh, it's absolutely devastating, Stephen. It's, Americans are seeing the effects of the border invasion all across the country. You see it in New York, you see it in Chicago, when they're shipping. I mean, at this point, it's not even just being invaded at our southern border. They're literally flying them in from their countries of origin into our country to try to seek asylum. They're really manipulating our laws, and that's what's happening. We have no laws anymore. And this is a big deal for me to say because I'm a former prosecutor, and I defended my country as a veteran, and our Constitution is being shredded. But, our border is so unsecure. And what's happening is the drug cartels have teamed up with China, the communist Chinese. The communist Chinese are bringing in the fentanyl to the drug cartels, and the drug cartels are shipping it across the southern border into communities. And that's why we've seen an uptick in fentanyl usage and the rise in death. And as a former prosecutor, I remember just even 7 years ago, fentanyl wasn't one of those crimes that you would come across all the time. It was usually meth. It was usually, at one point it was crack, but that kind of ended. And then it's always switching because fentanyl at one point was $20 a pill. Now it's gone down to $2 a pill. So it's a lot easier for people to have access to it. And now they're targeting children with the multicolored drugs on it. And this is why the drug cartels are a big problem. I said in Congress, I'm going to work to classify them as a foreign terrorist organization. We need to go to war against the drug cartels. We need to go after their financial network. This is a multi-billion-dollar business. I mean, these people, it's a crime syndicate. They're making money off the drugs, but what has upticked in the last 4 years under the Biden regime is that they are making a lot of money on the human trafficking. And that's why we've seen 10 million people cross our southern border in 3.5 years. And that's bigger than the population of Arizona. It's bigger than the population of 40 other states. I mean, this is a big, big deal. And here in Arizona, we actually had a criminal gang activities from the illegals. They were coming in from Chile, actually, and they were burglarizing people's homes in the middle of the night. They were calling it nighttime robberies or dinner time robberies. And they would go in and steal all this money, and they target affluent neighborhoods predominantly. So, it's just a sign of the times. When there's no consequences for your actions, criminals are going to take advantage. And that's exactly what's happening. So, we have to, it's really simple to actually get control of the border. First, you have to enforce the laws on the books. You don't need any more laws. You got to enforce the laws on the books, build the wall, and then go up to the root of the problem, which is the drug cartels, which Mexico allows to operate freely. To classify them as a foreign terrorist organization, go after them like we did with ISIS. It has to be an intelligence operation. They are causing havoc all across our country, and especially here in Arizona.
So if you think about it from like a profitable business standpoint, think how much fentanyl you have to move instead of just moving one person at $10,000 a pop. Mm-hmm. No wonder they've got into the moving children and women and men, military-aged men from all over the world up into the country. So it is something that needs to be addressed. What about, if Biden were able to stay in, he gets more ballots than Trump another time. Can our country even sustain another 10, 15, 20 million people? Like, you think about if they know for a fact Biden has 4 years or Kamala Harris gets installed, aren't we going to see a greater run on the border than we're even seeing now?
Absolutely. No, our country is not going to be able to survive with another Biden administration. We know Joe Biden is not in charge of his administration, and it's being run by a lot of Obama holdovers. Joe Biden's really just not all there. I mean, it's pretty obvious and apparent to anybody paying attention. But our enemies are going to take advantage of us, and they already are, Stephen. And exactly what you said. The drug cartels, they've become sophisticated. I don't even call them the drug cartels anymore because a lot of their money is coming from the human trafficking, like you're mentioning. Because for them, they don't care if they lose a person. All their job is to just get them across the border, and it seems that Border Patrol is just welcoming them in because of the directive of the Biden regime. So I don't believe our country can survive, but our enemies are going to take advantage of it, and they already are. In the last 6 months, we've had 30,000 Chinese nationals cross our southern border. This is unprecedented. Never before have we had this many communist Chinese. And I'm an intelligence officer. You have to think like the enemy. And in order to defeat the enemy, they're going to do this. Why? Because they're going to take advantage of the situation. And what's really concerning in my district that I'm running in, we have, it's a really growing economic area. And a lot of the Taiwanese semiconductor microchip companies that are coming out here are coming into my district, the biggest in the world, TSMC. They're putting in $60 to $100 billion of investments into it. And of course, Taiwan is doing that because they're trying to get away from their island because they're scared of a Chinese possible invasion. And think about that. If I were the Chinese, what I would do is put spies over there. And that's exactly what's happening. Why do you think there's 30,000 communist Chinese crossing our southern border? So, it's the threat. The border security is national security. The threat isn't just the Chinese communists. Now, yesterday, apparently there was a breakup of ISIS plants here in our country that were from Russia. So you have the rise of radical Islamist terrorists, especially with the war going on in Israel. You have China, you have so many of our adversaries. They're going to exploit our southern border. And that's what I am so concerned when you ask about how we're going to survive. I'm not sure how we can survive economically when all the illegal immigrants are such a burden on us. But then I'm also concerned how we're going to survive when you have criminals, because a lot of them are coming in from mental institutions that they're emptying out their prisons and they're sending it across our border because they don't want to deal with them. And then you have terrorists and our adversaries who are going to try to exploit it. So this is a recipe for disaster. And I'm very concerned about a possible black swan type of event that we're inviting because of the disastrous policies of Biden.
Yeah. I didn't serve in the military because at the time it was a peaceful time when I was in my early 20s. But, you've served overseas, you've served the country. Is there any time where your military leaders would have allowed a base or an area to have their perimeter breached? And yet we're allowing the United States to be breached by thousands of people a day. It's insanity. It's absolute insanity.
And I love how you framed that. I'm probably going to use that on the campaign trail, Stephen, because I think that's really smart messaging, because it would sound ludicrous, right? If you're overseas and you have a military base out there, how are you going to allow, people that you don't know, they're unvetted. One of my jobs, I was serving overseas in Saudi Arabia under both President Trump and Biden. I was there under both of them. And one of my jobs is actually to, after I don't know if people remember, 2019 Pensacola terrorist attack, we actually had a Saudi Arabian pilot. He was invited by the U.S. government to train for pilot school. He killed 4 of our service members. And so President Trump at the time put a pause on training with the Saudis. And it was a big deal because the Saudi Arabians, they're the biggest purchaser of all military training and equipment in the world. It's a $130 billion contract. So what I was doing is I had to implement new enhanced security vetting on so many of the Saudis who were wanting to train in the United States or train with us over in Saudi Arabia on our bases. So I've seen firsthand at the lack of accountability that I think is happening right now. And, of course, our enemies are going to take advantage of the situation. I mean, who wouldn't? They're seeing the United States on decline. It's not even just our enemies. You're seeing these people, why there's 10 million people coming across. Why would they want to go in the legal way when they know that they can bypass the system just by crossing our southern border and basically getting granted asylum and amnesty? So it's a disastrous. The rule of law is collapsing right before our eyes, Stephen. That's what I'm especially concerned about. You're seeing it happening with the weaponization against political opponents. You're seeing it with our border and with our elections. It is a very frightening time that we are facing. And Congress needs courageous leaders, courageous warriors who are going to stand there shoulder to shoulder with President Trump to save our republic from these evil villains, quite frankly.
Yeah. Well, we know that the military wouldn't let their perimeters be breached, but people here at home are. For example, your governor, Katie Hobbs, I look at her fight on the border compared to Governor Greg Abbott, and it's just night and day. And yet, look at what's going on with Katie Hobbs now. She's being investigated for taking a $400,000 bribe. I mean, that's 8 times what the national average income is working an entire year. She takes a $400,000 bribe, looks the other way, then kicks back millions and millions of dollars to the contractors that donated. What are your thoughts on this case? Are they going to actually be able to get traction against Governor Hobbs? Is she too powerful? What are your thoughts?
Well, she's similar to Biden. I mean, anybody who sees Hobbs knows that she's not all there. She was just installed so that the political apparatus can control things. When this alleged bribe happened, it was actually before she was governor, during her transition. And it was the same time period that she withheld evidence in my election lawsuit, Stephen. I mean, the reason why I'm not there as Attorney General investigating Hobbs is because Hobbs was Secretary of State, and she made sure that her buddy, Chris Mays, the illegitimate Attorney General, was able to win that race and win the lawsuit. So, Chris Mays is in charge of investigating Katie Hobbs. She owes her position because of Katie Hobbs. It's going to be a cover-up. I know that there's a Republican county attorney in Maricopa who's also looking at doing another investigation on Hobbs separately. But I will tell your viewers, just because she's Republican doesn't necessarily mean she's on our side. She was also the one who withheld those 9,000 provisional ballots from us, which were public records. So this whole thing, I've seen the corruption. It's very deep, and it's not just one party, Stephen. And Katie Hobbs, unfortunately, I don't think she's going to be held accountable. We have to look at what is at stake. Katie Hobbs, Chris Mays is not going to try. She's going to open up an investigation, delay it. This is what their tactics are, and then exonerate her. It's obvious what's going to happen, and it's predictable. But I know Rachel Mitchell, it does seem like she wants to go after Katie Hobbs. I'm not sure the courts and the apparatus is going to succeed, maybe because Katie Hobbs has control of the media out here, and Arizona is really deeply compromised. So, it's not good for Katie Hobbs just off to be investigated. But this is where President Trump, I believe, the only way to save our republic is by electing President Trump. And why is that? When President Trump's elected, he's going to be able to appoint U.S. attorneys all across our country. The U.S. attorney for the District of Arizona, it's at the federal level. They can actually go and do an independent investigation into a lot of this corruption and bribes and actually hold them accountable. So that's why it's so imperative we get President Trump elected.
Okay. Well, I mean, it is a one-off situation, her taking a $400,000 bribe. I mean, other than Democrat Representative Henry Cuellar, who took a $600,000, but just those two. Oh, also Bob Menendez, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
He's still serving in the Senate. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's like there's a pattern with these Democrats who can do pay to play. Maybe they learned that from the Clintons. You've been a prosecutor. You have a great track record for that. Talk to me for a minute about the Hunter Biden conviction, possible 25 years in jail. Let's compare that to Trump, who is also facing time in jail. I see a huge difference between these two. And yet the White House, Biden, the Democrats are saying, well, we let the president's own son go through an honest and fair justice system. But we all know that he's going to be pardoned before Biden leaves. He's just not doing it now because it would be really stupid to put your king in jeopardy in a chess match too early in the game. What are your thoughts on these two cases?
Well, you know exactly what's going on, Stephen, and that's why I appreciate you, because it's nice to talk to awake people right now. Hunter Biden, it's a cover up. I mean, all the videos coming out of Hunter Biden dragging, a girl. It's really sad. I mean, he's naked, dragging her through a hotel room. No assault charges, no charges on cocaine, no charges on any of those stuff on that laptop, which it looked like they were underage girls. It's a complete whitewash. And so what did they go after Hunter on? So your listeners know, it was really 3 charges, and it was about it was a gun charge and saying that he wasn't authorized to, he was falsifying a document. So they're going after him on that. He also faces trial possibly in September on federal taxes, another federal case. How convenient, right? I mean, the reason why they went after President Trump in state court is because I think they know they're terrified of President Trump going back to the White House, where the president has pardon power only for federal crimes, not state crimes. The difference is, one is they're trying to create this illusion that the legal system is fair, that it's going after Hunter as well as Trump. But no, I mean, what Trump is going through is something so shocking to our system. It's never been done before. You have Fannie Willis going after Trump. You have Letitia James going after him, which is destroying the economic environment in New York. And you have Alvin Bragg, and then you have Jack Smith. The lawfare is really, is shocking, and it's amazing to see in some ways. But the convictions of President Trump, it was a sham trial. I can't even give you a legal analysis on it, Stephen, because we know it had to deal with federal elections, and how did it get wrapped into a state prosecutor's office? God knows. They're trying to use a very broad statute of business fraud, and these people are sophisticated. Never underestimate our enemies. And look at, Colangelo. He was the number 3 head of the Department of Justice under the Biden administration. He left that position to go work with Alvin Bragg on this case to go after President Trump. This was a political witch hunt. There's no ability to give you a proper legal analysis because the law doesn't matter anymore. It's if you are favored in one way, you're going to get a special treatment. Hunter Biden, we'll see what his, ultimately what he's going to be sentenced. I have a hard time believing it's going to be prison time. I wouldn't be surprised if the probation officers recommend probation for it. And then you're exactly right. Biden's going to commute his sentence. He's going to pardon him. We know what's going on. Stephen Bannon is about to go to prison now for defying a congressional subpoena from the January 6th committee, which shouldn't have even existed. Peter Navarro is sitting in prison right now. And you have Merrick Garland, who literally just defied a congressional subpoena, as the head of the Department of Justice. Who's going to investigate him? Who's going to bring charges against him? Not his Department of Justice. The best thing that President Trump has done is expose the corruption in our system. And it's up to the American people to fight back and to reclaim our country that they stole from us.
Yeah. My favorite part of the Hunter Biden situation is President Biden is like, we need 88,000 new IRS agents because, we can't have people not paying their fair share. Oh, by the way, your son Hunter owes the IRS $1.4 million. Your daughter Ashley also owed the IRS. Like, these people aren't even paying their own taxes, and yet they're building an army of IRS agents that they plan to give firearms to in order to coerce more tax money out of the American people. It's it's almost comical, and yet it's sad because, like, the Pentagon can fail an audit. The Congress is held to zero budgeting standards, and yet if you and I give someone $600 on the Cash App or Venmo, they want to know about it. Like, they dial in the Elon Musk satellites right down to our house. Oh, let's go get that guy's money. It's crazy.
It's scary, Stephen, and you're right. I mean, you have to. I always tell people I'm a happy warrior, even though we're going through all of this. And I say that because we can't be as miserable as the left are, right? I mean, these people they have purple hair. They don't know what gender they are, and all they're doing is screaming. And the best warriors fight for what they love. And that's why we still have to put a smile on our face. But we see what the con is. Hunter Biden, an artist that sells $750,000 pieces of artwork. I mean, it's such a corrupt system, but people like you are doing a good job at speaking the truth, always, and fight for justice. That's what we got to do.
Yeah. Wasn't the lady that anonymously bought Hunter's art then invited to the White House a dozen times? Like, come on, if this isn't pay to play, I don't know what is. Okay. So you're running for Congress. You're doing well. I believe that you are going to win, even though the war machine is going against you to keep you out of office. President Biden's favorability as of this morning is at 35%, the lowest of any president in the last 100 years. Why do you think so many people disapprove of this president? And then what can you do to bring America First opportunities to Congress with you?
Yeah. Well, I think they're looking at the results. They're looking at their pocketbook. They're looking at their, so many people can't afford to own a home. The American dream in many ways is dead. I mean, you have 7.5% interest rate with the rising inflation. I mean, inflation is out of control. Our dollar has been devalued by 26% in 3.5 years. I mean, this is republic ending tactics that are going on. And your Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, it doesn't, people who maybe didn't like President Trump before because they were brainwashed by the media, they're going, wait a second, I was living well under President Trump. Maybe the lies that the media was peddling is actually, coming true in many ways. Or it's really interesting what's happening. So I think you're seeing an uprising when Black Americans in Chicago see that illegal immigrants are being treated better than they are. No, that's going to bother them. That's going to go after. They're not. Why would they want to support a president that's failed them? You look at dying cities like San Francisco and New York. So I mean, you saw that New Jersey rally. I mean, it was 100,000 people, right? I mean, so many Americans from all across all walks of life. You're seeing in Michigan, Arab Americans abandoning Biden, because of this disastrous foreign policy. And they look at President Trump, who brought peace to the Middle East. So you're starting to see a huge shift in. And it's similar to 2016 in many ways. Nobody expected President Trump to win Pennsylvania, to win Michigan, Wisconsin, so many of these states that the Democrats just thought they had a hold on. And President Trump was able to communicate directly with the American people and the forgotten men and women of this country and give them a voice. And I'm proud and honored to also give the voice to the forgotten, and that's why I'm going to Congress. And, for me, I look at Congress, its policy alone is not going to fix our problems. Writing laws alone is not going to fix our problem. What we need is courage. We need courageous fighters. And Republicans, for a long time, I believe they've gotten us in this mess because they weren't willing to take on the radical Democrats who've turned into Marxists. I mean, you have the most extreme members of the Democrat Party, like Ilhan Omar, like Rashida Tlaib, all of them controlling in many ways so much of the narrative of the Democrats, and they allow it, and versus you see the Republicans being divided. And this is why President Trump needs to win, because he is the leader of our times. And I believe this moment we have to rise to the occasion. But I'm looking forward. I know so many Arizonans, it really hurts me when I'm on the campaign trail. They can't afford their medicine. They can't afford their food, their gas. And, we have to really start to have tough choices. Look at where we're spending our money. Does Ukraine need $200 billion? Or are we going to devalue our currency like this? So we have to make tough policy choices, but it really just requires courage right now more than ever. So that's why I'm honored to be endorsed by President Trump and so many patriots like Kash Patel, like Rick Grinnell, like former NYPD police commissioner Bernie Carrick. These people, they've taken on the system. They know how corrupt it is. And I'm going to be proud to go to Washington with all of them. And as we take this, as we give power back to the American people.
Yeah, absolutely. How can people learn more about your campaign and support you so that we can get you into Congress fighting for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going up against a machine, as you mentioned, and they're trying to keep me out of office. And I would appreciate any financial support and spreading the word amongst our friends. But they can go to abeforaz.com, abeforaz.com. They can learn a little bit more about me. But I want your viewers just to know, when I first got back from my deployment, the reason why I ran for Attorney General, I was 30 years old back then, Stephen. I was the youngest candidate statewide in the country. I would have been the youngest AG since Bill Clinton, believe it or not. The reason why I ran is because, I no longer recognize my country. And that's me saying it as somebody in their early 30s. Imagine, some of our seniors, they've just witnessed our country totally collapse. What we thought was right is now wrong. It's turned into upside down land. And it's gonna take a new generation of fighters that President Trump has inspired to take this fight head on, just like it's a 1776 moment. So I'd appreciate all the support at abeforaz.com.
Okay, great. I will put that link down below. Thank you for coming on the show, fighting for our country, both militarily and also now on your way to Congress. We're excited for you to be there and fight for the American people, for the border, for getting down inflation. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Stephen.